Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. Hi, Anita.
Hello, Mel.
You know what? I'm really glad that you're alive because last week I wasn't quite sure if we were both going to make it.
I was not sure either.
Can we talk about it?
Yes, let's talk about it. So, where we live is right up against a mountain range, and we have a regional weather phenomenon where we experience crazy windstorms. And you can't even call it a windstorm because that does not explain it well enough. It's like a hurricane without the rain. And I call it the blowpocalypse. And we had a blowpocalypse. And it knocked our power out. We were without power I was without power for 2 days. I think, Mel, your power came back on a little bit sooner than that.
I totally bailed and went to a friend's house in a different county. But there were people
right.
in 3 counties that didn't have power. And one of my students, I think she didn't have it for like 5 days. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was like 91-mile-an-hour winds.
No, like 99, 112.
Oh, is it 99?
Yes.
So hurricane grade winds. This has happened before.
It's crazy because it just blows over trees, like huge trees, and the roots just like lift up the grass and fall over. And there was 2 or 3 trees that fell on top of houses and cars in my neighborhood. And luckily, we just had some like branches fall off of trees, like big branches, and didn't have any other structural damage. And honestly, so the last time we had a blowpocalypse like this was in 2011, and all of the shingles of our roof flew off. So this year I was like, crap. But then I imagined Jason, like Angel Jason, like standing in front of my house and being like, "Get thee hence, winds," or something like that to protect our roof. So that's what I'm imagining, and it makes me feel happy. So I'm going to go with it.
In 2011, the National Guard came in for
The
emergency
National
effort.
Guard came in this time too.
Yeah, and then anyway, it's just a thing. It happens here, but it's still so on brand for 2020. Can we just talk about that a little bit?
Yes.
As soon as you guys sort of start to figure out hybrid school,
Yes.
then they take away the part where you could do e-learning right?
Yeah,
Because there's no power.
Wi-Fi. And like my cell phone wouldn't even work. Like I have data, but it wouldn't even connect to the internet. And I think it's probably just because everybody was trying to access the internet the same way. And so I couldn't make phone calls. I couldn't text.
But it only worked with me, remember?
I know, it was so weird. I would try and text all these people and it wouldn't go through. And then I tried to text Mel one day and it went through immediately. And I was like, oh! And I told her all of the things immediately because she was the only person I could communicate with. It was weird.
I know, it was so strange. So now we're back online and we're talking again and nobody has died.
Yeah.
As far as Anita and me. So.
Yeah.
Now, since that's happened, it was Scott's birthday. This is a weird time for me. And what I decided to do was instead of just like holing up in my room and isolating, I decided to hole up in my trailer in the mountains.
In the wilderness?
In the wilderness. And it was just an experiment to see if I could actually do it. Because what my experience has been is if I plan anything that's with people or a big celebration or something with expectation, I, for some reason, just can't live up to it. And then I freak out and I can't go and I have anxiety and all that stuff. So I am happy to report that Scott's birthday, which is also our engagement anniversary, which is also September 11th. So many things on one day. It went better than I expected.
Yay!
So I am back from that now and just want to report that. So anybody that thinks that they never are going to be able to do anything again and survive, I'm proof that you can take a baby step and maybe work through things.
Did you go all by yourself? I mean, you took the dogs, but was there anybody else there?
No, I went myself. I took it down all by myself, and I feel like I'm such a strong woman. I'm so strong. I should have a t-shirt that says I'm so strong. I'm a widow.
I want to make t-shirts.
Let's do it.
Yes, I'm totally on it as fast as a widow is on anything. Right. Especially because so last week homeschool, like we had just started, we were trying to get in the groove, and then it was like school's canceled. They never cancel school in Utah. Okay, we can have like 40 feet of snow and your kids are going to school. So when they cancel school, you know, it's a big deal. So they canceled school 2 days in a row, and then it was like you couldn't even do homeschool because nobody had power, no Wi-Fi, no accessing the internet. So this week again has been our like, okay, start back into homeschool. Let's see if we can do it. It's hybrid. So they go a couple days and then they're at home a couple days. And mostly what it has looked like for me is me sitting on the front porch eating potato chips so that I don't stab somebody because it's so frustrating and I want to punch people. And today I said to my son, I said, how does your teacher get anything accomplished when there's 30 of you in the same room? And he looked at me and he said, it's because we listen to our teacher. And I was like, you said the quiet part out loud. I'm like, you're not supposed to just freely admit that. But he was just very open and honest about it. He's like, well, we listen to our teacher and we don't listen to you.
Hey, at least he's honest.
I know. I wanted to hit him with a ruler, but...
But that ended in the 1800s, right?
Well, and also I broke the ruler last week because somebody was like whacking somebody else with it. And so I took it and I like snapped it in my hands and like chucked it. And my kids were like, what just happened? Yeah, it's great. It's fine.
So Anita, guess what is awesome?
What is awesome?
We have some patrons that have made the support for this episode possible.
Ooh, this is so exciting, you guys, because this is like our level up to keeping this going. So, Mel, just for people who aren't maybe familiar with Patreon, what is it?
So Patreon is a platform for people's fans and followers to help support creators and their content. So this was actually the way that people did things way back in the day, like Shakespeare time. People would say, hey, good old Mr. Will Shakespeare is going to write a play. Or I know that that's controversial because people are saying that like Shakespeare was like a collective of people. But you know what I mean.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know he was controversial.
Oh, really? You should Google that anyway.
No, I don't want to. I don't have the bandwidth for controversy over Shakespeare.
Okay, fine. So it's just a way for supporters to help creators do their thing. So it's kind of using the old school way but in the new school way of the internet.
And it's like you can help support us in some of the costs that go along with the podcasts for less than you can get your Netflix subscription every month. So it's not unreasonable, and it will just help us keep going because we want to keep going. But like practically, sometimes that seems like it's going to be hard. So
basically, the more support we can get for the podcast, the more we can make that our full-time job. It's about the amount of effort of a full-time job, and so it's getting pretty tricky, but we would love to keep things going because even stuff like keeping it on the internet, on the podcast hosting, it costs money, and as soon as we stop paying that, everything goes off. No more. So that's kind of just some nuts and bolts of podcasting, and we have 3 tiers. We have the Widow Friend, and it's just $5 per month, and that helps us pay for hosting and some other things like that are just necessary. And then we have the $10 per month Widow Bestie, which is awesome because you get a shout out every episode that you are a patron on this level. And that could also help us have funds to maybe get you a babysitter, Anita, so we can have more time to make better episodes
during the episode. Whatever. You guys love that.
And our 3rd tier is the Widow Wife, which is $20 per month. And it's all of the previous perks of the other 2 tiers, but you get behind-the-scenes content exclusively. And you can also submit a request for podcast topics and be part of our creation process. And we are also adding a Q&A with Anita and myself. So there are a lot of perks in that one. Feel free to sign up if you would like. If not, we still love you. It's fine. But that's the gist.
So patreon.com/WWDN.
Special Patreon shout out to Gabe Lozano, Aaron Kozik, Jenny Barrow, Christine Anderson, Diana Becker, and Sarah Morris. Thank you so much for being our Patreons at the $10 or higher level. We could not do this without you. Okay, I'm Mel.
I'm Anita, and we're just 2 young widows figuring out
Widow
we do now as we blow down the plains into the lake.
Where are you, Widow Coil? Widow Coil!
I'm blowing away in the tornado.
I'm dying of dysentery.
Today, our guest is named Jennifer Hanks, and actually on her Instagram account, it's her handle is Coco's Caravan. So I'm not even sure to call her Coco or Jen or Jennifer or Jenny
or Caravan
or what. Or Caravan, or Cara, or Van. That is the name of our guest today, and she is somebody that I follow on Instagram, so we're always looking for more people to pull in and get different life experiences within the widow and within the grief community. So thank you so much for joining us today, Jen.
Yeah, I'm super glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, tell us the deal with Coco's Caravan. Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
So when I was trying to come up with a fun name, I was like, oh, now that I'm on this new journey of life, like what would be a cool thing like to be like journey and, like come follow me along this new journey. And I thought Caravan was cute because whenever like you caravan, you're following along in your car and you're following that person. So I thought Coco's Caravan was fun. Like just come join this new journey of mine. So yeah, so you could call me Coco or you can call me Jen. Either or is totally fine.
Did you have your Instagram name before or after the movie Coco came out?
After.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool because the movie Coco deals with like death and like
That's true.
remembrance.
Oh
So
yeah. Cool. I
yeah,
didn't think
I
about that.
wondered if it had something to do with that. So that's cool. You were channeling Disney without
Yeah.
even knowing it, but without getting sued also
Yeah,
because
right.
they don't want that.
I definitely wanted the name that like I didn't want it solely focused on like me being a widow because I'm more than that. And I wanted it, all around positive and where I'm going in the future too. So when I was thinking of a name, I'm like, I want it to be, all around.
That's awesome. Coco, tell us. No, I just called you Coco.
I love it. That's awesome.
Whoever you are, lady, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, kind of some of your
So I
info.
just moved back to Denver. I grew up actually in northern Colorado, Fort Collins. And that's actually where I met my husband. We grew up together. We actually, went to high school together. He kind of always had a crush on me, but I was always like, no, we're just friends. And once we got to college, we became like best friends. And he still really was like, hey, we should date. We should date. And I was like, no. So our story goes, it's a pretty dramatic back and forth kind of
Ooh,
story. But
some drama.
yeah, so we both grew up in Colorado, and it's nice being back.
I have a question though. Did you guys ski?
Yeah,
Yes.
totally. This is what you did in high school. You buy your pass, your season pass to Copper Winter Park. And every Saturday, that's what you did. You drive, it's like 2 hours, drive up to mountains, go all day, and you get with all your high school friends. It was like the thing to do. It was so fun.
Take us from there.
Okay. So we kind of had the back and forth thing for a while. And he went on a mission to Germany, a church mission. And when he got back, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I really think I like him. And when he got back, we went on a couple of dates, and I was like, oh gosh, like, I just don't feel like it's the right time. And a couple months later, I ended up going to upstate New York for 18 months to serve a church mission. So it's like been pretty drawn out by this time. And by the time I got back, we finally like aligned our timing, finally started dating and got married in May 2013. And like life was just so great. Like marrying your best friend, like it really felt so easy. Like that transition into marriage was so great. Like I just loved it so much. We were married not even like 2 months before he started complaining about like really bad chest pain. And I'm thinking, oh, like, he was so fit and strong, and he was 24 at the time. I'm thinking, oh, maybe you just like worked out too hard. And it got so bad that he finally went
Pecs
in.
were too big. They were trying to like burst out of his shirt. And
I'm like, just take it easy, man. I'm like literally not thinking anything of it, right? Goes in.
You don't when you're that old.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
So he goes in, gets a scan, and sure enough, they find like a huge tumor in his chest. You read about it, but you never think this would be you. Like it was really hard. So we've been married for 2 months. We pack up all our stuff and we drive back to Colorado because that's where both of our parents are. And like within days, we're living in our parents' house as newlyweds. Like it was like our whole life had just been turned upside down. And we got straight into doctors immediately. And like we went to the hospital in Denver and did tons of scans, found out that the cancer had not spread to the rest of his body. He just had that tumor in his chest. He had a form of testicular cancer. So he got like the same chemotherapy as someone who would have testicular cancer, but it wasn't exactly the same. That was like a really hard time. the first week he was like doing his treatment, it was like okay, but like each week it got like harder and harder. There was this one day I would stay with him at the hospital, drive home, and like shower, eat, and then go back. And I just remember coming back. I was alone. I think my parents were out of town, and I just could not get out of bed. Like I was so depressed. It was so hard. And I remember calling my sister and being like, I have to go back and be with him, because like imagine like what I was feeling, and like imagine it for Justin. Like it was probably that much harder, because he's the one going through all the physical pain of all the chemo, right? And he's stuck in that hospital and he's so depressed. And I just remember calling my sister and being like, I need to get out of this bed and go back to that hospital, and like, can you please just help me get back? And she talked to me, and like I helped me get dressed, like got me back to the hospital. Like it was really hard. I mean, like, in watching someone you love go through that, like it was miserable. I remember the last round of chemo, we were driving and he was going like 10 miles an hour. I'm like, you're going really slow. And I think just subconsciously he was like, I can't do this again. Like going in for this last round of chemo, he's just like, how am I going to do this? Like, how am I going to get through it? Like, it was pretty hard. I mean, that was our newlywed life.
At 24,
like
right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Like, it was super, yeah, super hard. So at the end of that, he got a huge surgery. They removed the tumor. It was like, they said it was like almost the size of a rugby ball. And
wait a second, a rugby ball?
Yes.
That's huge. I played rugby. That's huge.
Yeah. So like they had to cut open his whole chest. It was like kind of like open heart surgery. Sternum. It was huge surgery.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So, and then as of that day, he was cancer free. And we were like, this is amazing. You know, like that dark cloud of like just depression and like that world of cancer is just awful. And like just having that lifted and be gone, like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. So we moved, like we started treatment in August and everything pretty much finished in December. And so we were like, great, let's go back. So we moved back to Utah and we started like living our life and we were just so happy. And he would get routine scans often. I think it was like once a month or every couple months. And the scans, you know, like you just dreaded it because you're like, well, we know he's cancer free, like it's going to be okay. But this one time he came back from his scan and I could just tell by the look on his face that it was bad news. So it hadn't even been a year of him being cancer free before they found a new tumor on a routine scan.
When he was diagnosed, what was the prognosis that they gave you for the type of cancer he had? And did they warn you that it would likely come back? Yeah, so they were actually really hopeful and they were super positive. Like actually, like people who have testicular cancer have a very good high chance of survival with the chemo. Like it's usually works really well. They were pretty hopeful. Like even each week, his numbers were great. Like, so it was pretty, like, even though it was really hard, like we were always like very positive feedback from the doctors, like, oh, this is going to go great. Like, and his numbers were really great. It was just like, we knew that we just got to get through it. And each week his numbers looked really good and it just sucked going through, but we were very hopeful. So when this new tumor showed up, they were like, this is weird. Like, we don't think it's cancerous, but we're just going to have a surgery and remove it. But we're pretty positive. We're pretty sure it's not cancerous. They did like try to do a biopsy or whatever. And they're like, let's just remove the tumor. So we go in for another surgery and those are just the absolute worst. Like I'm just a wreck. Like I can't focus.
It's really hard. So we're kind of going in like, we're hoping, like, please, like, just let's let this not be cancerous. Sure enough, the doctor comes out and he's like, not only is this cancerous, but there's this weird gel coated everywhere. We're not sure what it is. I lose it. Like, I start sobbing, like, uncontrollably. Like, here I, like, have to go tell my husband, who's, like, unconscious, you know, waking up from surgery, that, like, he has cancer again. Like, I could not do it. I was just a wreck, like, hyperventilating, couldn't breathe. Like, it just was the worst. And I remember my dad just, like, calming me down. We said a prayer together. Like, you can do this. Like, you can go talk to him. Like that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do on the list of hard things I've had to do. Like, telling him that, like, cancer was bad. Like, I was dreading. And I went in, like, he was waking up, and, like, I had to tell him, like, it's cancerous. And, like, automatically he's like, okay, well, what do we got to do? Like, let's do it. What did they say? Like, what do we need? Like, automatically he's just, like, so positive. Like, that's how he was through all of cancer. Like, just so positive. I just would be the worst person to be around if I had cancer. I'd be like, don't bother me. I'm so, you know, like, I just would be miserable to be around, I'm
Leave
sure.
me alone.
Let me be sad.
Give me some cookies.
Yeah, let me be sad, you know, pulling the cancer card all the time. But he was not like that. And he, like, I went to him, like, a lot for comfort to calm me down, because, like, he just was so, like, whenever I got worried about it, just being around him, like, helped me feel okay about everything. And it, like, it helped lessen that, like, I was so scared to tell him that. So here we are back in the cancer world, which is like, once the first time you got cancer, you're like, we don't know anything. Like, we have no idea what's going to bring us, right? Like, the first time you had cancer, we went into it blindly. Now the second time, so much harder, because you know what to expect and you know what chemo's like. It was so hard. Justin was so depressed. That was so hard for me to, like, know that he had to do that again. He was so depressed. I remember not being able to go to work and, like, leave him alone, because I was really worried about him. I, like, had a friend or my cousin, like, can you just, like, go hang out with him for an hour while I go do this? Like, because he just was like, I can't believe that I have to, like, go back and do chemo. Like, it was really, really hard. The first time going to because this time we're living in Utah. So we started doing stuff at the Huntsman, and we lived in Provo. So the first time we drove up to the hospital to start his chemo for the first time after his cancer came back, like, we pulled up in the parking lot and he threw up, because he was just so anxious about doing chemo. It was so hard to watch. And you're just,
it's kind of like walking to the guillotine, you know, like,
yeah,
you know what's waiting for you, but you have to do it.
It was
like
so
no good
hard.
options.
So I was working full time as a fourth grade teacher, going back and forth. So I would, like, stay with him at the hospital after work, sleep there, get up and drive to work in the morning. It was, and because he would have, like, 1 week on, one full week, and then a couple weeks off, and then he'd go. So, like, the weeks that he was, like, in the hospital, living there, getting treatment, I would be there. It was such a hard time.
How did you prep your lessons while your husband had cancer? Jeez.
It was so crazy. Like, luckily, like, I had so much support from, like, fellow teachers and my boss and everything. So, like, it made it great. And it was hard, and we needed the money, you know, like, I didn't, you know, so you just got to do what you got to do. And it was really hard. But finally, after, it was just hard, because this cancer, I forgot to say, this cancer was so rare. They didn't even have a name for it. And there was like one person in the country who actually had like kind of heard about it before. Like the hopeless, like things just got worse and worse and worse. And he was basically like a lab rat. Like, oh, let's try this. Okay, that's not working. Let's try that. Like he had a chemo that has a lifespan on it that like you can only get a certain amount in your whole life. And then you have to stop taking it. And like it was working, but when he was done and he couldn't have any more, they were like, okay, what should we try now? Like it was hard because you're just like grasping at anything, you know, anything to find answers. So they found an outpatient chemo, which saved him. We just wanted some normalcy and we wanted to start a family. So in the middle of like Justin kind of doing his outpatient chemo, he would like go in every couple weeks. I was starting my journey with in vitro because with cancer, you know, and chemo, it kills all, you know, those sperm cells. So before Justin did chemo the very first time, he was able to bank some sperm. We got a positive pregnancy. We put one embryo in. Sure enough, the one embryo split, which is super, super rare. Justin from the get-go was like stoked. He's like, we can do it. It's going to be so fun. Like he was my biggest support in everything. Like anytime I was feeling anxious about anything, he was like, we can do it, you know? So I was 7 months pregnant when he started to get super sick. He like had a cold and we're like, oh, you probably have a cold and it takes longer at chemo patients. You know, when they have a cold, like it lasts 3 weeks long. It's super hard, but it just wasn't going away to the point where we had to take him in. And that drive to the hospital, we kind of just knew, I feel like it just wasn't good. And I think we kind of pushed it off for a while because we knew it was hard. He got admitted to the ICU until I could figure out what was going on. And then he was in the hospital for like a month. Here I am, 7 months pregnant. Like it was not looking good for the first time through this whole cancer journey. I've never lost hope. I always thought like, he's going to be here. He's going to be here. And that time in the hospital, that was the first time that I really had to think like I might die. It was really hard. And there was this one time I was home because I was like, for a month straight, I was driving from Provo to Salt Lake, which is like an hour drive in the winter. And every morning I'd get up and we would drive and spend the day at the hospital and I would come home because I'm pregnant, so I couldn't really sleep there. And it was hard. It was really hard. And he just kept getting weaker and weaker and they couldn't figure out what was going on. So there was this one day that his heart stopped and I got a call. My dad got a call because my dad was with me and they're like, my dad kind of was like, we need to go to the hospital. He didn't really say anything, but they like obviously were able to like revive him. And that was really hard. And I remember thinking, why did I get pregnant? Like regretting my decision now. Because before he was going to live, he was going to be here. I had so much hope. And that was like the darkest time in my life because I was like, I might be alone. Like he might not be here. That was really hard. And the decision of like, did I make the right choice? Like, did we do right? Like it's so hard to know, right? Like, but he started to get a little better and they found an antibiotic that like started to help him feel better. And he was able to come home and it was like a month before the twins were born. And that month was purely like, get him to the hospital, get him to the hospital. Like, okay, you can walk from the door to the foot of the stairs and back. That's all you're going to do today. Like, that's how we lived. Okay, eat this much food, drink this much of the shake. Like, can you at least get up and walk from this chair to that? Like, that's literally how we lived for a month. Just trying to get his strength up, trying to get him enough to be there at the birth. Like, it was just crazy. And he made it. He had oxygen. He was in a wheelchair, but he was there. Yeah, so with twins, you have to be in the OR because you never know, and you might need to have an emergency C-section, and you need to be there right there. And they have really strict rules, like you can only have one person there, whatever. Um, they let Justin come and my doula, and seriously, this so kind of them to do that because it just, even though he was in a wheelchair, but like knowing his presence that was there, just like to help me get through that was amazing. Everett was born. And then Marshall's heart rate dropped and they had to take him through C-section, and he was in the NICU for the day. But
that is the worst.
Double whammy. It's so
such a
awful.
ripoff.
I'm like, come on, my life is already so hard right now. Can you just give me
That's what
two
I'm thinking too.
vaginal births, please?
Or just two, like, just make this easy. Come on. When you were talking about Justin being in the room with you and then letting him be there, of course you wanted him there. That was like your whole goal in, for the last month was to just have him be there. So how awful would that have been to get there and then they're like, oh yeah, he can't come in? You'd have been like, you don't understand.
The doula obviously helped a ton, but just like knowing he was there,
yeah,
because it was hard.
And how long from his first diagnosis to then the boys being born was this span?
So we got married in like 2013. That's when the first cancer, and then he passed in 2018. So it was like almost, like the 5 years with a little bit in between where he was cancer free, but.
Yeah, 5 minutes of like,
yay,
our life is fine.
Yeah.
Just listening to your story, Jen, I think all of us can appreciate this a little bit, but listening to what you're saying, you're like, oh my goodness, that sounds so crazy. How in the world did you do it? And talking about it afterwards, you probably feel that same way, but you just do it. When it comes down to it, you do really crazy stuff. Yeah, but now you're talking about it. You're like, yeah, I was working full time and I was pregnant with twins and I was taking care of my husband.
Yeah.
It's like, how? But you just have to.
Yeah. Yeah, you have no choice. I know people say like, but like, what's the alternative? I love that that quote. Like, you don't know how strong. What's that quote? So, like, you don't know how strong you are until
your husband has cancer and you're pregnant with twins, and then you find out
until you know
he dies.
Like, yeah, it's amazing what you can do.
Yeah, it truly is. Okay, we'll keep going now. So you had a rip off for a birth.
Yeah, so the boys came home and we have and Justin was kind of doing good where he could hold the boys and feed them. And we had like a month of that, like where it was actually really fun. Like we were watching movies all day, feeding babies. Like obviously it was really hard. We were living at my aunt's house because she had room for all of us to kind of stay and help. So my in-laws were living with us, and then my mom was living with us, and we had just so much help. And it was actually like a really sweet time that first month of them being home, just because, played with them and fed them. Like, I'm not going to discount, like, it was really hard, but like now looking back, I'm so grateful we even had that. Like, I didn't even think he was going to make it to their birth. That was like, the boys were born in April and he passed July 7th. So we did have a couple months together. And
because he had cancer and because there were some scary times, had you guys talked about what to do in case he did die? We've talked to lots of cancer widows, and it seems like a lot of times you don't go there because you don't want to go there. So did you guys talk about it? Did you discuss what he wanted or what he wanted your life to look like if it did happen?
We never did. And I regret it every single day. I could tell like some of my family members were like, Jen, you should, but like, even then I was like, no, like, but I regret it. I have dreams where I see him and I'm like, what did you want me to tell the boys? Like, it torments me, like, and I did this really sweet thing where like his close friends and family wrote letters and for to my boys in place of him, basically. And that was really sweet. And that's going to be really cool for the boys to read those letters someday about their dad. Before he died, he was not doing well at all. I'm a mom of newborn twins. So like I am trying to take care of twins. My life is chaos. And here I have my dying husband to like mentally manage my life. So I feel like everything that happened was like meant to be in the way that it happened. But I still was in denial. It was like the paramedics are there and they're working on him. And I'm still like, it's going to be okay. Like you're never prepared. You're never prepared. And it's okay to like be hopeful, but I also wish like a little part of me was realistic, because we could have had those conversations. And I regret not having those conversations.
That's so hard. We hear that from so many people too. I don't think that we've heard a lot of people who have had those discussions, because when you bring that out, it almost feels like a betrayal of your spouse, because it's like not holding hope out for, and you're trying to be like the strong one for them and to hold on to hope for them. And so if you bring it up, then it's kind of like, yeah, I expect you to die, you know? So
yeah.
I have really struggled with my kids not having, I would kill for like a letter from my husband to my kids. Like that is so emotionally hard.
Oh yeah.
And so when people ask about like slow death versus quick death, that's what I say, you know, I would kill to have that. But then I find out that with all of these cancer or slow deaths, that most people didn't do that anyway. So then I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take the quick death.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes me so sad though for you guys. Ugh.
Yeah, because we actually had the chance to talk about everything.
Yeah.
And we didn't. But I get it. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, like I literally have dreams where I'm like, hurry and ask him before he just, you know, wanting to still have those answers. It's hard, and I'll probably feel that way forever.
Well, it's not like you guys ever had a respite from anything hard ever since you got married, you know? And so
I know.
It just seems like you would have to be in survival mode 100% of the time. And then when you did have a little chance to breathe when you thought the cancer was gone, obviously I don't know what it's like to be dealing with a spouse that's has cancer, but I do know, like, even in grief, where it's like we start to feel a little bit better, and then a grief wave comes around again. Sometimes like the fall feels so much longer because you are at a higher place. And so it's like you didn't have any consistency. And it makes so much sense that you'd want to ask those things, but like trying to be in the moment and trying to, you know, be positive. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sorry that it haunts you. That sounds awful.
I know.
Since Justin's passing, what has your life looked like?
Not what I thought it would. I think that's like been really hard to accept. I did not think I would be a single parent 30s, right? I think that's kind of what's been hard. Accepting that this is how my life has turned out has been really hard. I wrote a blog post about like the season of life. Like everyone kind of has these season of life where you're like, I really wish this wasn't part of my season of my life, but this is it. So how can I be okay with where I'm at and keep going? And I'm still there. I'm still trying to figure it out. My kids have like honestly saved me. The temptation of I could be with my husband tomorrow is very, very real. Those first couple months are so dark and you just want to be with them so badly. It's really hard.
When you started your Instagram, you said it was after Justin's death, right? That you started your Instagram?
Yeah.
Your Coco's Caravan. What kinds of posts were getting good responses? Like, what did you learn in your own journey from you sharing your journey?
Well, as I started to share more, I started to realize I wasn't alone. Because sometimes when you get on Instagram and you see all these families and people, you forget, you kind of get caught up in it. And that's why I love following other widows, because I'm not the only one going through this. And it has helped so much. And helped me a lot in coping, because it's a way to like write out my feelings and like really, it's like therapeutic. And knowing that I'm like helping who's reading my story, or just knowing that like you're not alone, it's been so therapeutic and rewarding. And like, that's why I keep sharing, because I know that it will help. I remember when I was, when Justin was really, really sick, there were a couple widows that I had kind of been following who also had lost a spouse to cancer. And just looking at their pictures helps me. Like seeing that like she was still okay after her husband died, it like was like, okay, if he does die, like it looks like I'll be okay.
Whatever that means. It might be a different form, right? Than, well,
Totally.
than anything. But yeah, like you still can survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how we feel with the podcast. It's like it helps us, of course. It kind of keeps us grounded and remembering that we're not the only ones that this stuff has happened to. And in addition, it also helps others. So it's kind of, even for a terrible situation to be in life, like a lose-lose situation, there are still some win-wins that are helping spread awareness, you know.
Part of my life is really happy because I'm not in the world of cancer anymore. You know how like COVID right now, people are like, I just wish, I want to go back to the way it was before, like that's a good comparison of like how the world of cancer is. Like, I just want to go back to the way it was. And so not dealing with like the anxiety of when the scan's going to be like, and knowing that Justin's not in pain anymore brings so much like comfort.
I'm just curious, Jen. Anita and I obviously are like wackos and we think everything's funny, even though we also think it's not funny. How much of your situation have you found humorous? Which sounds like a very terrible question to ask, but you know what I mean. Like the dark humor.
Oh my gosh, that's my husband was totally like that. Like Joker. He's like, I'm pretty sure all the Chick-fil-A sauce is what all that goo is inside my chest.
Oh, don't ruin Chick-fil-A sauce. And gross.
Don't ruin my fave. But he just like, he joked about stuff all the time that really like helped lighten the mood, because I feel bad because I would go to him often to just feel like calm about everything. But he really was like that, just super funny and humorous while he's making jokes, like chemo, just making us laugh. It really does help.
Did they ever figure out what the goo was? Maybe
No.
It was Chick-fil-A sauce.
Yeah, right?
I love how we've taken this story and we're fixated on the goo.
His theory was
Goo,
right.
though.
Yeah,
Well,
right?
that's sort of how this always goes. Mel and I are always discussing, like the weird stuff. That everybody's like, what? It's surprising, I think, for people outside of the grief community to get a look inside and see that it looks the way it does, because a lot of people think that it's just being sad all the time, but it's also making really awful jokes and things that are inappropriate, and my kids are yelling outside of my door. So, hooray.
Or that.
Yes, or that too. A lot of people ask us to give advice to people who are maybe in the earlier stages of widowdom or grief. What advice would you give to somebody who is staring down maybe a potential cancer death or has just experienced one?
I'm going to say this because I'm not talking to anyone personally, but like if your husband does have cancer, I would recommend taking as many pictures as possible and having the hard conversations. That does not mean you have to give up hope, but still have those. And I feel like my advice too for like new widows is, one, go to a therapist. You're navigating so many new relationships, new things in your life. Like I feel like my therapist has helped me so much. I think another thing is just knowing that like grief will always be there. It's going to be like less, I think, over time, like you were saying. But I think just like knowing that like it's going to be there. This is my thing with grief. And like my advice to widows is surround yourself by people who support you. Something that I've realized is grief I am not the same person I was before. And that's really hard for people to accept. Like, I've changed, and support this new you as you're trying to figure out and navigate grief. I was on Instagram the other day and I saw this quote that said, "Stop shrinking to fit as you have outgrown." Stop trying to be this person you were before, because you're never going to be that person again. Like, and you know, you're going to be navigating this new life.
We've talked about that too, how it's like you as a person have been burned down to the ground, and now you have to rebuild yourself. And in some ways, that's really cool because you've grown in ways, you've learned things, you've learned how to, have different relationships with people. And is it painful? Yes. But, if I was going to tear down my house, I would build it differently. Right. And so you kind of get that opportunity to do that. And you wouldn't build the exact, you wouldn't build the same 1983 style of house. You'd build like a cooler house with like a slide.
And it's like, you're going to do what's best for you. And okay, so here's my another advice to add on to that is put yourself first. It's okay to put yourself first and make boundaries. Yes. So that you are okay. I think in the beginning, I was trying to please so many people that it was hurting me mentally and emotionally. And it took me some time to kind of stand up for myself and be like, no, I'm going to put myself first. And it's hard because my last 5 years with Justin, I had no control. I didn't have control over cancer. I didn't have control over how I got pregnant, how I even gave birth. Like, everything has been out of my control. So now that I can actually take control of my life, like, I'm going to put myself first and do what's best for me and do what is most, like, what's going to help me be the healthiest, like, mentally, and be there for my kids. And I think that's okay.
So you were saying that you would suggest people surround themselves with people who are going to support the new you and are going to be respectful of boundaries and are going to realize that you're different, but are also just going to be there to support you. What have some of the people in your life, how has that looked for you? The people who have been supportive in a helpful way?
Yeah, I think like just having a friend. Yeah, like I had a friend just be like, oh, I can what you're going through and having to make the decisions that you're making, but I just want you to know I'm here for you. Like a text like that, like that's all. And just being like, I'm here. That's all I really needed. Like just to know that someone's there and to support you as you like keep going forward. And I've been blessed with like really amazing friends. Like I had my close friends send me a gift every month for the first year. And that was like so sweet.
I think it's so important for people, we call them grief civilians, just kind of as a joke, but because they always want to help. Like people are well-meaning, and I think it's easy as somebody who is not going through the trauma to feel like the only thing that you can do is to fix the situation, and because it's impossible, then they either freeze and do nothing, or I don't know, maybe they just freeze. And so it's really so interesting that the common threads with everybody that's gone through something traumatic like this, when asked what somebody can do, is like just do something, and it can be something as simple as a text. So it doesn't take moving the world or like building somebody a new Habitat for Humanity house, once a year or something to do that. It's like, it's the little things that mean a lot. So I love that you shared that. Thank you. What are your thoughts and opinions about dating? Blah. I hate this topic, so I'm going to let you talk about it.
It is hard. I gave myself like, for the first year, I was like, I'm not going to think about it. That I kind of gave myself that. It was really nice. I liked that because I had no pressure. no stress. Like, it was great. And then like a year came up and I'm like, I guess I should like download maybe an app or something, right? Like, and I feel like that just made it so depressing. Like, this is what's out there. Like, I'm never gonna find someone again. And then it just like, I feel like just adds to this already like a depressing situation, you know? The idea of like being alone forever, like that's hard for me. Like, I loved having a companion and someone to hang out with and a friend. That would be great. But I'm also, at the other hand, like we were talking, like I'm trying to also be okay with not finding someone again. I just need to be okay with where I'm at. And, you know, you hear the thing like, just live your life and keep doing things. And I'm trying to do that, if that makes sense.
It would be great slash horrible if there were maybe there is an app for widows and widowers, but then it's like, that's when all the vultures are going to descend and they're like, oh, people with money.
I know, right?
PSA, not all widows and widowers have money. Raise his hand, because life insurance, get life insurance.
Yeah.
It just puts us in such a strange category. It's like so awkward because you said you're 32 now, right? Being in your 30s is super awkward with dating. Again, if you've been in a relationship in the past. And so it's like, then add on top of it being a widow.
So
and also you have kids. And so it's like you have more to think about than just
moved around
you.
a little bit.
It's like, well, who's going to get along with my kids?
Yeah. I mean, like, that's definitely what's really hard. I mean, this is what's really hard is I feel like I'm married to a ghost. We had a great marriage. Like, really, things were so great. I have nothing to complain about that. Like, we really were so good for each other. So to have that just like one day end, when you were like, I never wanted that to end. So you still feel like connected to that person. You feel like you're married to a ghost. And what's hard for a widower as a wife, you have to at some point let go to a degree of that person in order to move on. And that's extremely hard because you have to make room for this new person someday. And letting go of this person you loved, like, I'm not saying I'm obviously still gonna love him, and I'm sure the person, if I find someone, like, I would hope that they would be, I wouldn't marry someone unless they like accepted my situation and would let my kids talk about him, right? Like, I'm not talking about that part. I'm talking about like, I have to let go of him in order to like love someone else too.
That makes me want to throw up. Like, that's so hard. That is not, how. I just, yeah.
Right? This is why we get depressed because it's so much. So it's easier for me right now to just be like, how can I be okay with where I'm at? And if I never find someone again, like, will you be okay? And I'm obviously not there, but I'm getting there. And it's hard. Like, I'm definitely lonely, you know?
I think it's so healthy that you're thinking that way, though, even though it's like painful and hard to go through. It's like that saying, have you heard the saying, why do we not try to be a better someone instead of just to be someone's?
Yes.
Like, belong to somebody. It's like, I think it's really easy. I mean, and it could depend on the culture that you grew up on or whatever, but you know, if you're thinking, well, the only way that I can be happy and whole is if I am married and I have kids, you're going to be in a lot of pain for a lot of your life because those things are not formulaic and they don't just happen. And so I love that you're owning that you need to take care of yourself first and take care of where you're at. It's so like psychologically healthy, you know? And then the rest will follow whenever you are ready or when the time is right. Or if it doesn't happen that you end up being with somebody else, it's also okay. And you're going to be fine.
Once my mindset kind of switched to that, it really has helped me a lot. And, you know, like, I always wanted kids. Like, that was a dream of mine, right? I have my kids. I'm, you know, like, if I'm happy, I'm content. Like, it would be so great obviously, to find someone again and to have like a love. But like, I'm happy with where I'm at. I have twins, they have siblings. Like, I'm not like, I'm content. Like, it worked out, but it would be, I feel like me personally, I would love to find someone again someday. I'm so young. Like, what the heck, right? Like, thinking of, 70, 80 years alone, like, seems so.
You're going to live to be 110?
That's a long time.
Oh.
How can you do math, Anita?
It's because my great grandma lived to be 105, so that's what I'm staring down.
Oh,
Yeah,
please
my grandma
no.
was 100. Yeah. So
Right?
I'm just going to keep drinking my Diet Coke and hope that doesn't keep me to live to 100.
I'm drinking the real stuff to try and kill me sooner. So, Jen, what are some things that have been helpful to you as far as coping with your situation?
So I think, like, obviously, like, friends checking in and, there's sweet gifts and stuff, but like that has been so helpful, and my kids. But I think like what's helped me a ton is finding other widows and talking to other widows. I found some on Instagram. When life is hard or a situation comes up, I'm like, she's going to understand me. She's going to understand me. And just having that person to just be like, oh, I totally get it. I know exactly what you're going through, like, has really helped a ton. I don't know if you have found that.
So that's why Mel and I call each other widow wives, because, we're just like, we're kind of our support system who can understand the crappy nature of young widowhood. And that was a total plug for our Widow Wives Club too, to find other people who you can just talk to and you can be honest about the really terrible things and they just understand it. You know what I'm saying? It's so hard to try and explain it to people who don't get it. So I 100% agree. One thing you've got going for you is that your sons are so adorable. They are so, 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 so cute.
Thanks.
You guys need to go check out her Instagram. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found this episode helpful. Please share with your friends and anybody who might benefit from hearing other grief and widow stories. Make sure you check out the Widow Wives Club if you're a widow or widower, or our Facebook or Instagram pages if you're just a grief, not just it, if you're a grief civilian. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Jen.
And we're just three young widows trying to figure out widow we do now.
This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it, and my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.